Tyre pressure. We've shown, with the help of a state-of-the-art lab and science, that it makes a huge difference. Yet despite this, despite the fact that it's free speed, free performance, most people are still leaving it on the metaphorical table. If you know someone who has a super expensive bike and kit, yet just relies on the thumb test before they go out on a ride, or they just get their track pump and bang in whatever, then, well, share this video with them. No, actually, in fact, name and shame them in the comments. Off-road, on gravel or cobbles, this can make even more difference, easily around 30 watts. But on the road, we know from the lab that it can be as much as 5 watts if your tyres are too low or too high. Focusing on the road, that 5 watts might not sound like much. So here is some context. While climbing, 5 watts is typically worth around 1.5 kilograms of system mass on an 8% climb. When a high-end bike brand unveils their new shiny model, claims of 5 watts improvement are typical. Those fancy aero wheels you've been eyeing up in the shop window might save you around 5 watts too. In a 40-kilometre time trial, 5 watts is worth around 20 seconds at 40 kilometres an hour, which is either a lot or not much, depending on your personal perspective. However, if you care about performance, if you want to be as fast as possible, or if, like me, you need all the help you can get, and you just don't want to get dropped again so that you don't then suffer years of torment, abuse, bullying at the hands of the YouTube comment section, followed by the subsequent emotional scarring, trauma and therapy, then surely the first thing you're going to do is the thing that you can do for free, the thing that you can do instantly. Well, apparently not, because people still don't do it. So what should you do instead? Well, I would say you should use one of the free tyre pressure calculators that exist. Silka have one and Pirelli have one now as well. But when you use the tyre pressure calculator, do it properly, because a lot of people, again, just wing aspects of this. So the Pirelli one has a nice feature in this regard, in that it doesn't require you to measure the inflated width of your tyre using verniers, because only the biggest nerds have verniers. I have verniers. Instead, what you do is you simply put in the actual width that's quoted on the side of your tyre, and then you also input the internal rim width of the wheels that you have. Now, you can read the width on the side of your tyre. The internal rim width of your wheels is something that's easily found with a Google search. In the case of mine, these are Elite Drive 2s. They're 23mm internal rim width. The previous generation, the original drives, were 21mm internal, incidentally. So my tyres are 32mm Pirelli P0s, the sort of Paris-Roubaix, Mathieu van der Poel winning combo. Brilliant. And I think they look really cool. So I put that in. This is important to do it this way because depending on the wheels that you're using, you could have a tyre that says 28mm on the side of it, but actually it's measuring up at 32. That's possible. I've seen it happen. The next thing is your weight. And again, get this right. And the important thing here is that you're getting the actual system weight of what you are when you're riding. So it's not the weight of you when you're naked. It's not the weight of your bike with no Wahoo on it and no water bottles and no saddlebag. Not interested in that. It's the actual system weight of you with all the stuff riding. So your clothes, your helmet and everything. The easiest way to do this is probably to stand with your bike and your riding kit on some bathroom scales, but you can weigh the two things separately and add them together. So my system weight, as with all this stuff today and a water bottle and all the rest of it, was coming out at 84.15 kilograms, which might surprise people as being a bit more. But once you add up all the bits and all the clothes that you're wearing on a cold day, it'll surprise you. Something else that's really cool on the Pirelli calculator is it does allow you to account for mixed conditions and wet conditions and also temperature and altitude. So they say for mixed conditions, you should, as a rule of thumb, put 3 psi less in your tyre. For wet conditions, 6 psi less in your tyres. And they also say that for a temperature variation of plus or minus 10 degrees C, requires an adjustment of approximately 3 psi. So you should factor that in if you're pumping your tyres indoors and then going outdoors on a winter ride. They also say, a bit like size bag of crisps, that for every 1,000 metres of altitude change, the inflation pressure varies by about 1.5 psi. So, yeah, there you go. Pretty cool. And that comes out at 62 psi, or 4.3 bar for my 32mm tyres. The next step being to pump them up. But there are some pitfalls here as well. So the first thing is I recommend trying to do this as close to the start of your ride or race as possible. And that's because air can leak from the system and your pressure can actually go down. The other thing is that the pressure that's in your tyres can change with respect to atmospheric and climate conditions. So if it gets warmer, for example, pressure will increase if the ambient temperature changes. And also altitude has a big effect on this as well. To illustrate that, here's some footage of size sea level crisps once they've been taken to 4,000 metres altitude in Bolivia. The next issue is the accuracy of track pumps. A lot of them can be quite pants, so either use one with an accurate gauge on it, or a little digital pressure gauge like this can be your friend. You could actually use this as well to check how accurate your track pump is. And I say this because in our experience of testing them, it's quite common for track pumps to be, well, either, sort of plus or minus 10 psi in accuracy, which kind of defeats the entire purpose of what we're trying to achieve. So what I typically do is put in more pressure than I need with the track pump and then just bleed it out and tune it with the digital gauge. Now with my tyre pressure set, I'm going to do a test in the real world because tyre pressure is not just about rolling resistance. As you well know, it's about comfort, grip, and being able to go around corners. And so that's something that I want to assess now. And so to do that, I'm at my local criterium circuit, and I'm going to test out 3 different pressures. The first one is the recommended pressure from the Pirelli calculator, which on these tyres is 62 psi front and rear. Then I'm going to test about 30 psi above that and 30 psi below that. The actual maximum is 87 on these tyres, so I'll go to that. The reason for that, and that's quite a big range, is because we're outside. There's quite a few variables, and I think if I were to just do 10 psi above or below, we could be getting into the realms of experimental error there and might not see a decent result. So I'm going to go for a bigger range. Plus, banging your tyres up to the maximum inflation that they say on the sidewall is kind of what a lot of people still do. I know people on the club run that do that, and they think the harder, the better. Harder tyres, faster tyres. Plus, the lower end of that, which will be around 32 psi, is actually the recommended pressure that we got from the Silverstone lab as to what riders should be using on the cobbles. So it'll be interesting to see how that actually performs when you're on a decent road surface, which typically happens between cobbled sectors in a cobbled race or a gravel race. So let's do it. Test 1, Pirelli Optimum pressure. Let's go. I'm starting in the same place each time, and then I'm going to ride around the circuit for 20 minutes at an average power of 210 watts with each pressure. We're then going to see how far I go and how far I am from where I started each time. This test is interesting because it will help you visualise how much further you can go with the Optimum setup, but it also looks at the real-world effectiveness of the different setups. The low pressure should be slower, but it should give me a wider contact patch and more grip in the corners, meaning I might actually be quicker. Run 1 done. The alleged Optimum pressure did 10.81 kilometres. Run 2, I've now banged them up to 87 psi, which for 32mm tyres is massive. These things are absolutely rock hard and feel horrible. The thing that's concerning me a little bit is that the surface of this criterium circuit hasn't been used much recently because it's winter and it's quite slippy and wet today, and there's this moss that's been growing over it. You'll see it in several places. So I'm a bit worried about grip, but guess we'll find out. Right, let's go. I mean, I don't know what I was expecting for that, but that was just not as far. Well, so therefore it was slower with the higher pressure. So I finished on 20 minutes about here, whereas last time I finished right down there. So the difference is about 200 metres. 200 metres, so for 40 minutes, that's, you double it, right? So 400 metres, it's, I mean, if you were time trialling or doing a race, that's plumbing loads. But the other thing, which doesn't come out in that, is just the overall feeling. So around the corners, I'm not going quick enough, and this surface is very good, and having 32 tyres helps to really push the limits of grip. And so that's not really an issue for me. What is noticeable, though, is just there's a lot more vibration. And, you know, over the course of a long ride, you know, that could have an impact on how you feel. But yeah, it's definitely more bumpy with the higher pressure. Right, time to go low. So going this low might seem ridiculous, but there are actually instances where riders have used pressures equivalent to this in narrower tyres to win races. So one really notable example to me was a Tour Series criterium years ago around Wembley in London. And that was won by Tom Pidcock. And in second place was Connor Swift. Now, the two of them managed to stay upright, and it was very wet and slippery. And pretty much everyone else in the race decked it and was just sliding off everywhere. It was like the beach landing scene from Saving Private Ryan. And the reason why those two were able to do so well, apart from being very strong, was staying upright. And the reason for that was that they were both running very, very low pressure. So I know that Connor Swift was running around 50 PSI in 25mm tyres, which is very low. That'll do. That's a lot squidgier. Look at this. Right, super squidgy boys. Place your bets now. Bet. I was actually really consistent on my runs and managed to average 205 watts every time. Whoa. That was slower and not as far as I expected. So that was actually shorter than the high pressure one, but not by much, about 50 metres shorter. So yeah, there's not much in it, especially when you factor in experimental error. But going around some of the corners, especially when you're going faster, you can feel the tyre squirming a little bit underneath you. But on other bits where I was feeling a lot of vibration with the high pressure, it was just really plush and really smooth and really nice. So yeah, I think there are situations where this could be faster, but it would have to be really wet and really slippy, or on cobbles. Well, if you need any more convincing after that, I don't know what to suggest. I mean, just don't say I didn't warn you when you get dropped. Actually, I do have an idea. We recently did a video where we tried to ride 25 miles as quick as possible in under 50 minutes. And I actually used the Pirelli recommended tyre pressure, which came out for my setup then as 74 PSI. If you want to see how we got on, click somewhere on screen now. I'm gonna go now. Love you, bye.